y'all, and welcome to today's video. I am so excited. We're going to be doing top 3 eyeshadow palettes in every category. I did this video last year. It was a tag type video created by my friend Angelica Nyqvist. I will have her most recent top 3 eyeshadow palette video linked down below in the description box, but it's a twist on the top 3 makeup instead of just saying top 3 palettes. Because, listen, I love eyeshadow palettes. I have a lot of eyeshadow palettes. I love eyeshadow. We're not just going to pick 3. We're going to pick 3 in different categories. I'm excited. I have shopped my stash. I have been like sitting on my answers for a few days. I'm excited. Let's talk about eyeshadow and we'll jump into it. Getting started, I just want to say I'm not going to be mentioning my collaboration palettes as answers because of course they're my favorite. Like if I had to pick 2 favorite eyeshadow palettes of all time, of course I would choose my Heather Austin palette with Adept Cosmetics. This was a limited edition palette. Adept was so wonderful to work with. They kept this palette around for me for over a year. It's a favorite. It's still a favorite. This is one of my palettes. You see how used it is, but it's just one. Like I have others that are way more used than this. So I'm not going to be mentioning my collaboration palettes. Of course, my Unearthly Cosmetics Resurgence palette is still available. I'm not going to mention this for an answer, but if you're like, Heather, what are your top favorite eyeshadows of all time? Of course, I'm going with my collaborations with Unearthly, with Adept. I am wearing my Unearthly today. I'm wearing the full Resurgence collection actually. So I wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way. And I'm not just going to not mention my collaborations. I tried not to pick any collaboration palettes, like content creator collabs, for this video. I wanted to not, even though I have so many friends who have created beautiful, beautiful palettes, so many favorites, but let's get into these questions. So the top, or the first question is your top 3 neutral palettes. Okay, so I just pulled top 3. I didn't put them in like 1, 2, 3 order, so we're just gonna talk. I pulled the Blend Bunny Cosmetics All Done Up palette. To me, this is a neutral palette. This is a beautiful palette. Obviously, I was gonna say it's one of my favorites. Of course it is. That's this whole video, like my top 3, Heather. They get it. They get it. It's a favorite. So I do have a video on this palette. I will say, I think I have videos on most of the palettes. Maybe not all, but I have tons of videos. I have tons of tutorials. I will link everything I talk about down below in the description box. Some of the links may be affiliated. If I have any discount codes or affiliate codes with these brands where you can save some money, and everything will be down in the description box. So definitely check there if you're curious about anything. But this All Done Up palette is neutral to me. We have these cool tone neutral row right here. We have these more warm tones here. We have these like kind of like dirty brown shades, almost a little like olive lean here. We have, yes, like a couple of colors here, but I feel like these are very muted tones. This is overall a very neutral palette for me. I also really like this size from Blend Bunny. We have a nice big mirror, but it's not as large as some of their other palettes. We have a beautiful row of like shimmer shades down here. The formulas in here, impeccable, amazing. Definitely one of my favorite neutral palettes ever. Okay, next up, this is the Chocolate Martini palette from Glamlite. Now this one is all neutral. I love this palette and I have loved it since the minute I had it in my hands. It's so beautiful because you have warm neutrals, you have these more cool tones over here, you have this beautiful light shade, you have a deep dark shade, and I love this formula from Glamlite. We have different textures in here with the shimmers, some more smooth, some more like high impact sparkle. This one that's kind of this white to gold duochrome. I love that we have these fiery like copper shades. We have these more true bronzes. These shades look similar in the pan, but one is actually a good bit lighter, one's a good bit deeper, so they do translate differently on the eyes. We have the beautiful addition of this like blue, like sparkly blue brown shadow that makes the palette really special, and it's such an amazing formula from Glamlite. I love this neutral palette so much. It's such a good one. It's a nice compact size. Listen, this palette came out several years ago and it's still a favorite. I feel the same way about this Lunar Beauty Eternal Eclipse palette. Beyond amazing. Like, Lunar Beauty is a favorite brand for me, of course. The palettes we're going to talk about, they're favorites for a reason, but this palette is such a cool take on neutrals, because we definitely have neutral tones. I like the addition of this more pinky leaning neutral, this one being a little bit more warm, whereas we also have some cool tones in here. I like that we have a matte with a sparkle to it in here. I like that we have these two blues right here. We have some silvers, so very neutral with two pops of blue. The formula in here, super special. This palette and Strawberry Dream, the one that's in the same style packaging, I just love. Lunar Beauty did such a good job on this palette. One of the best, of course. Okay, this one is top 3 rainbow palettes. So first up, we'll talk about blends from Blend Bunny. Yes, I've already mentioned 2 Blend Bunny palettes in this video, and we're only on category 2, but the blends palette is so good. This is an all matte palette, and listen, I'm a shimmer sparkle type of person. I love shimmers, I love multichromes, I love all of that. So the fact that I have an all matte palette in my top 3 tells you a lot. You get all of your colors in here. And when I think of rainbow, like I'm thinking full on Roy G. Biv, right? The full on rainbow. We have that here. We have light tones, we have dark tones. We do have a row down here of neutrals. I love this palette. The amazing Blend Bunny formula. I definitely slept on this palette for too long. Then I fell in love with Blend Bunny and I was like, on the site buying that palette. Okay, I also pulled the Glamlite Rick and Morty palette. This is a newer palette to my collection, but I fell in love with it. I fell in love with it. We're mentioning Glamlite again. They're making amazing formulas. This palette, while it doesn't have a red, I still felt like it fit with the theme because we have the pinky tones, okay? This, like, we may not have a matte yellow, but we do have this yellowy shade over here. We have our greens, we have our oranges, violets, blues. This is beautiful. I really like that Glamlite gave us light tones and deep tones in the palette. This is more of like a almost a neon rainbow. Really beautiful formulas, really beautiful textures in here. And I like that it is rainbow without being too on the nose. Like I said, it's got some neon type tones in here, almost like a very vibrant rainbow. Okay, if you haven't watched any spoilers, you don't want any spoilers for the Unearthly Cosmetics Summer Mystery Box, the large one, skip ahead a few minutes because this Get Groovy palette is a gorgeous rainbow palette. Of course, I love Unearthly, like I collaborated with them, a favorite brand for me. And when I saw this palette in the mystery box, I was so happy because I'm like, yes, like a full-on rainbow palette from Unearthly in this smaller, more compact size. We have a matte and a corresponding shimmer for each shade. I love that. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, like we've got it, and we've got it in that beautiful Unearthly formula. I really like working with this palette. I like that the red is more of a saturated, deeper version of a red so that I can add some depth to looks, but I like overall that it's very light, bright, fun, and It's amazing quality. Now, okay, the next category is monochromatic palettes. So I did pull my Glamlite Dirty Martini palette. I love this green palette. I think it's so wonderful. We have beautiful, beautiful green tones. Now I realize this shade aren't green, so I still feel like they're monochromatic though, right? Like it's still a monochromatic palette to me. The formulas in here are beautiful, just like the chocolate martini palette. I love it. I actually did a get ready with me recently where I used this palette, maybe just a month or two ago, but beautiful. Like this palette is several years old. It still performs amazingly well. Like I love that palette so much. I also pulled my Sigma Corderosa because this is a coral leaning palette and I feel like this one is just beautiful. Like I think they gave us such a good mix of coral pinky tones. Now again, we do have some kind of neutral shades that aren't necessarily coral, but overall I feel like this palette is more monochromatic. It's got those pinky shades. I really like this one from Sigma because, like I said, in addition to the corally pinky takes on the mattes, we have beautiful like different shimmer formulas in here too. We have this beautiful like very shimmery, almost topper-like formula from Sigma. We have their more traditional shimmers, just very flattering. Every time I pick up this palette, I have a beautiful look, and like I really like that one. I feel like it's kind of underrated. Okay, I also pulled the Stone and Rock palette from Odin's Eye. I've been enjoying this one so very much. And again, this isn't completely monochromatic. We do have like the white and the neutral shades. We have some kind of deep charcoaly shades, but overall this is very green olive leaning. Even the neutral browns have this olivey undertone to them, which I love. I have an olive undertone to my skin, olive warm leaning, and I just find like green shades so easy and effortless. And this palette, I love every time I do a look with it. It's so amazing. I love the size of this palette. I almost even put this as one of my like neutral palettes because I do feel like for me these tones do lean more neutral, but I think it fit more in this category. I have an honorable mention in this category too, not because it is a collaboration, but because it's limited edition, like you can't get your hands on it anymore, but I love it, so I'm gonna mention it. It's the Adept Cosmetics Inspired palette. So this palette, I love it so much, y'all. I love it so much. If you got your hands on this palette, pull it out, play with it. Again, you see those green tones I love so much. Not completely monochromatic, but definitely leaning more on that green side. It's just such a good one, so it's definitely a favorite. Okay, our next category is small mini palettes. So I pulled some mini palettes. I really like small palettes. Of course, like the more options, the better. But there's something fun about reaching for a very curated color story. I pulled my Natasha Denona Mini Xenon palette. This one, of course, I can create a look with it by itself, but I really like mixing it and matching it with other palettes. I find myself really enjoying this for the light, like creamy white matte in here and the deep dark black matte. It pairs so well with other palettes. If I have a palette that's light and I just want to add some depth, or if I have a palette that's dark and I want to add some brightness, this silver is phenomenal. It's a really beautiful palette from Natasha Denona, one of my favorite brands, of course. But I also pulled my Star Wars Pat McGrath palette. This is the Sith Seduction. I'm pretty sure this is still available. I hope. I'm sorry if not, but I think it is. This is an all shimmer sparkle palette, but I fell in love with this one when I tried it from Pat McGrath. I think this was the standout of the kind of like Star Wars palette collection that Pat McGrath did. I love these deeper dark tones. I love this sparkly olive, this sparkly like blackened blue. I love that we have this kind of like red copper shade, this cool tone taupe, this really pretty like light silvery champagne color. Really beautiful formulas. One of my favorites. Like, of course, it's in my top video, but it's just so pretty. It's only 5 shades, but I love all 5 shades. And then this palette has been another one that's been a favorite for years. It is the Odin's Eye mini eyeshadow palette Erd, and this, surprise, surprise, like, it's greens. It's greens. It's greens. Now, this palette has 5 pans, but the pan in the middle is a split pan, so you really get 6 shades. But when I was thinking of mini palettes, I was like, I feel like it needs to be around 5, 4 or less shades. So I still feel like this one fits. It's got these beautiful green tones. The formulas are beautiful. You can definitely tell how much use I've gotten out of this one. It's been a favorite for a few years now. The next category is drugstore palettes or drugstore priced palettes, which I realize that can vary, like, from country to country, what your price point is on things like this. But I decided to pull palettes in the drugstore price point from what I can buy the palettes at. So I had to pull my Serenity palette from Cosmic Brushes. This is a favorite. Depending on the, like, exchange rate, it's usually around $25, which I feel like is in that kind of BH Cosmetics, ColourPop type price point, Beauty Bay, palettes like that. But do you see the color story? Beautiful. Like, if you took this palette and you were like, Heather, you can buy the palette back, but now it's $60, I would say, okay, like, here's $60. What else do you want? Like a kidney? I don't know. I love this, and the fact that it is in that more drugstore price point, all the better. The formulas in here, amazing. This palette has a beautiful matte formula that's so easy to work with. We have a beautiful, like, multi-chrome shift shade in here, beautiful shimmers, just all around amazing palette. I love the other palettes I have from the brand as well, but this one, just, the color story is so me. The color story is so me, and I love it. Okay, this next one seems to come in and out of stock throughout the year. It is the Hocus Pocus Gather Round Sisters palette. This is the first collaboration that ColourPop did with Hocus Pocus, and this was just such a fun, more kind of grungy color story. I know they have collabed with Hocus Pocus 2 more times after this, and I love both of those palettes, but this one just remains the favorite. It has beautiful neutral tones that are more kind of warm leaning. We have these purpley tones, some green, some red. I just feel like I can create a variety of looks with this palette. I think the formulas in here are divine. We have that matte with sparkle that I love. We have the great ColourPop shimmer and matte formula in here. Really, really beautiful. This palette launched 3 or 4 years ago now, and my love for it has not faded. Okay, BH Cosmetics Passion in Paris. I did see this palette is still available. It seems to go in and out of stock as well, but it's amazing. Like, this is the best BH Cosmetics has to offer. I really hope they get back on their eyeshadow palette train, because they just make some amazing palettes. And I want to say this palette, like, my price is around $18, and then usually I can use some type of, like, discount code, something like that, coupon code, depending on where I buy it from. But this palette, we have light shimmers, we have dark shimmers, we have light mattes, we have dark mattes, we have stuff to create neutral looks, berry toned looks, we have this beautiful purple in here, we have this beautiful deep dark green, beautiful deep dark blue and black. And it can be hard to find really good dark matte shadows at a lower price point that aren't patchy and that give you that depth. All 3 of the palettes that I'm mentioning have that good dark matte formula in them, and I am here for it. This palette is just, it's well loved for a reason. I love that we have these shades to lighten up with. I love the overall color story. We can go deep, we can do dark. I feel like I can create so many looks with this palette, and you wouldn't just automatically assume it came from the same palette, because I feel like I can do such a variety. Like, you can do a monochromatic look if you want to, easy peasy. You can mix and match. We have this beautiful, like, deep dark kind of pewtery silver color. Just amazing formulas all around. The next category is luxury palettes. So I decided for this one to pull palettes that were over that $100 price point. And I'm going to talk about my Natasha Denona palettes first. These two that I pulled, sometimes they seem to be in stock, sometimes they seem to go out of stock. The Natasha Denona Trio Chrome palette, obsessed. And again, like, I'm sorry if it's discontinued. I don't know, but I love it. It's like a favorite. It is such a favorite. These grungy, murky greens up here, I love. I love that we have some pastel shades to lighten things up with. I love that we have 3 different trio chromes. I love the purpley tones. I love the peachy tones. Everything in this palette works so well together. No matter what look I do, I love this. I do not regret a penny that I spent on this palette. It's so freaking good. Like, if this is not a permanent palette to Natasha's Denona's line, like, I'm so sad, because it's so beautiful. Even the packaging like shifts from like purple to blue. And I also pulled my Metropolis palette. This is what made me fall in love with the brand. I bought this palette. I had thought about it for so long, but you know, it's pricey. I'm like, is Natasha Denona worth it? Do I really want to spend $100 on a brand I've never tried before? It is worth every penny. One of my favorite palettes in my collection. I'm not sure if you can still get your hands on this one or not. It seems like sometimes with Natasha Denona, things will go away and then all of a sudden they will pop back up on her site and then they'll be gone again. We have these beautiful warm orangey browns. We have the green tones. We even have some cool tones right in here, some blues. It's just, I wish Natasha Denona would give us another Metropolis, like a Metropolis 2.0, something in this same format where you get all these shades, something where we have neutral and color. I know, like, listen, the newer palettes Natasha Denona has put out, Yucca, like, I love that. I love Yucca as well. But for the luxury category, I really wanted to pick something that was $100 plus. And I also pulled my Pat McGrath. Which one is this? The Mothership. Which one though? Mothership. Okay, I'll put it in the description box. I think my sticker must be off. But this one, I love this one. I just, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. We have some color from Pat McGrath. We have a matte black. I love this formula from her. I love this brown. We have this white to pink shade in her beautiful formula. We have this blue to purple. So we have a couple of duochromes in here. We have this pink to kind of like this coppery shade. We have a beautiful olive. The 2 shimmers here are gorgeous. Like, just there, you can kind of see the shifts in the mirror. Yeah, everything about this palette I love. Now, I added 2 categories to Angie's questions because I wanted to. So I had added a category for all shimmer, all sparkle, all special shade palettes. And I had to pull in my Seahorse palette from Adept. I'm obsessed with this palette. This could also fit into that luxury category, but I decided to make an all shimmer sparkle special category. So no mattes in the 3 palettes I'm going to talk about. This palette is full of multi-chromes. This is like pastel leaning multi-chromes. I think they're so beautiful. So beautiful. Adept makes, of course, some of my favorite formulas. I do have a video on this palette. I've also used it in Get Ready With Me's and things like that. I think it's such a beautiful palette on its own to create looks, but also to mix with some of my favorite mattes. I also love the way these shades look on top of a base, like a colored base underneath. Put these shadows on top of a black or a blue or something like that. Beautiful. And they just look like completely different shades. I say that for all multi-chromes, shimmers, like a base underneath can really transform them. But this palette, it's just so good. It has so many unique, special multi-chromes in here. I love it. I find myself reaching for this one a ton, even if it's just for an inner corner shade or something like that. I just get a lot of use out of this one. Again, it's from a favorite brand for me, so no surprise there. But I also pulled my Clionadh Deep Sea Treasures palette. This palette is also new for this year, and I love that Clionadh, who normally does like single shadows, I love that they did this curated palette of their multi-chromes, and I love that they chose this like deep sea theme because one, I love the outer packaging. I think it's so cute. It's 8 shades like curated for you. I love that we have like all these multi-chromes. I was gonna say this red shade, but when you move it, it's like orange, fire, gold, copper, like they're multi-chromes, so they move to different shades, but every shade is beautiful. Can I pick a favorite? I don't know. I really like this one that's like this pink to purple to blue to green. Really, really special, really beautiful. I like that we have some true like bright colors in here. I like that we have some deeper shades, and I like that we have this shade right here, Fool's Gold, that in some lighting and some angles, it's more of a neutral shade. So if you wanted to throw it on with browns and just elevate your more neutral leaning look, you can do that with this palette, or you can go like full on purple shifty multi-chrome. Like, it's the amazing Clionadh formula. Like, of course it's good. Okay, if you've been here for a while, you know that this BellaBeauteBar Angles of Illumination 3 palette was kind of an unexpected favorite. So this is an all duochrome palette, and this is another one that I feel like I reach for a lot for inner corner highlight shades. If I'm playing with matte shadows and I want to play with something fun, these, like, I just really enjoy reaching. Well, for this one, the Adept, the Clionadh, like I did hear that this palette is going to be coming back in stock. I just love it. I'm so glad that they didn't discontinue this one because there's something really special about the shade selection in here. I love that we have some cooler tones, some greens, some purples, and then we have these like hot pink, orange, like we have the neutral leaning shades. We have shades light enough for inner corner highlight, really bright, like just a really beautiful formulas from BellaBeauteBar. I mean, I feel like you can kind of see how used my palette is. I try to kind of like, you know, keep my palettes clean, but sometimes they get messy, you know, and I just love all shimmer. I love all sparkle. I love all 3 of those palettes. Okay, the last category, the last 3 palettes, I decided to do my top 3 pastel palettes. I have loved dipping into pastels more and more, and there are a lot of brands that have been putting out pastel palettes lately, so I decided to make it its own category. I pulled my Natasha Denona pastel palette. This one, it's so good. It's so good. I love her cream to powder formula, and we have that formula in this palette in 2 of the shades. We also have like a duochrome shade from her. We have her super sparkly formulas. We have a more topper type formula in here. I love this, like, this take on pastels where it's almost this lime green pastel, this kind of periwinkle blue, like this little quad right here, phenomenal. But all of the shades in here are beautiful. This is also like a duochrome type shade. I really love this one. I think Natasha Denona killed it with the formulas, the shade selection of this palette. It's so, so good. But I also had to pull my Cosmic Brushes Delicious Delights. I wanted to call it Cosmic Delights, like just merge the 2 names together. It's because I've been talking for too long now. But I had to mention this one. Like, it's so beautiful. I love these pastels. Yes, this could have fit into my like drugstore category, but like I said, I love this brand, and I really love these pastels. This is a newer launch as well, but I've enjoyed it so much. I think it was genius that they put the white in here with these pastels because you can lighten them up even more if you want to. We do have some beautiful shimmers in here, duochrome, multichrome, but overall I feel like this is very pastel leaning. This light periwinkle blue, so beautiful. Of course, the more green tones. I love this orangey and pinky shade right here next to each other. Beautiful formulas, beautiful, beautiful pastel shades, but you know I had to mention the BellaBeauteBar Pastel Garden. This palette is large. She's in charge. Yes, she is. I also love their Smoky Glam palette, but I wasn't really sure what category to put it in. I almost put it in neutrals, but I'm like, no. Like, so, you know, I was like, you know, every favorite palette I have doesn't have to fit into a category. We're sticking with the categories today, Heather. And this palette I had to talk about for pastels because immediately seeing this, you know this is an all pastel palette. There's nothing deep and dark about this. We have some very light pastels. We have some more mid-tone leaning pastels. We have amazing shimmer sparkle formulas in here, amazing mattes. We have some duochromes, like just every shade. I have used every shade in this palette and every single shade performs beautifully. So like, it is a favorite. It's such a good formula. I feel like some of these brands definitely appeared more than once. You can see, like, you can definitely see, like, some of the brands that just consistently hit it out of the park. There were definitely some favorite palettes, like I said, that didn't, like, kind of fit in these categories. But I had fun shopping my stash, looking at the categories, pulling. Like I said, I've kind of given myself several days to prepare for this video because I didn't want to pull anything in a rush. I kind of wanted to give myself time to think about it. I had so much fun. I'm going to list Angie's video down in the description box. I'm going to link all these palettes in the description box. I'm also going to put the categories, so if you would love to tell me your top 3 in all of these categories, I would love to read your answers in the description box. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I had fun just sitting down and talking about eyeshadow palettes. It was fun to me. I hope you're having a great day. Please do subscribe. If you're curious about what other makeup I have on my face, like I said, I do have my full Unearthly Resurgence collection on, my lip gloss, my palette, and my highlighter, but I will link the other makeup items that I have on down below in the description box, along with my necklace that my friend Jamie makes. So definitely check the description box if you have any questions, and I will see you very soon in another video. Bye!